Hey you guys, this is Raging Cypher here with Monarch, Squadron Gaming. This is a new series I'm going to be doing on the channel. I'm not sure what I'm going to call it yet. In this series, I'm going to go back to the games I've been playing and do a full review of everything I've seen so far and tell you what I think. So I thought I'd start off with last year's biggest release, Fallout 4. Now, I've been a fan of the Fallout series for a few years, and I started off with Fallout New Vegas. Yeah, I know that's relatively recent, around 2010, of course, but New Vegas' silliness really brought me into the game series. I had a huge amount of fun with it and still play it occasionally. Now, once I had sufficiently no-lifed New Vegas, I kept getting the urge for more Fallout, so I went and bought a copy of Fallout 3. I played it for a while, got stuck in the tunnel that leads to Galaxy News Radio, and I saved poorly. I got saved in a death loop where I kept getting punched by a ghoul. I decided to quit and go back to other games I was playing at the time, like Skyrim and Oblivion. And it wasn't until my dear friend Chippy, who you might know from his occasional video on our channel, demanded that I play it, that I actually picked the game back up. So I started over and played until I beat the game. The gameplay wasn't as good as Fallout New Vegas, and I absolutely hated not having iron sights, and the severe lack of guns compared to New Vegas was disappointing. However, the atmosphere was completely different, mysterious and spooky, unlike New Vegas's Where Is Everybody atmosphere. And seeing things like the Washington Monument 200 years after a nuclear war really made for fantastic imagery. I played the game for over 300 hours, 12 and a half days that I dumped into that game. Believe me, I've done the math. Then I got into the DLCs and spent another 300 hours. By the time I was done, I had spent 25 days in a video game, and I had found every item, perfected my special stats, and collected every unique and semi-unique in that game. I quite literally wore the game out for myself. So then I went back and played the first and second Fallout games. I loved them too, but once again, Fallout 3's atmosphere won me over for all of the other games. So cue me being out a wonderful Fallout now. I, like everyone else, entered the long wait for a new Fallout game. I was there for the hoaxes, there for the speculation, looking for any little clue that might signal that Fallout 4 was on the way. Finally, Bethesda bought out a spot at a video game convention and announced to the world that the wait was almost over. I went into our friendly neighborhood GameStop at midnight, an hour late apparently. The game released at 11 in my area. We got there just in time as they were locking up, and they let us in anyway, thankfully. So I got the game and installed it, spent 2 or 3 hours getting it downloaded, and entered my long adventure into the beautiful Commonwealth. It took me a while before I decided to do a review. I really wanted to get in and take time to decide what I didn't like, what I did like, and what I thought I liked but I didn't. Here are some of the things that I've written down. Okay, so initially going into this game, I expected to hate the voice actors, and for a while I did. They grew on me, though, especially the female protagonist, voiced by Courtney Taylor, who voiced Jack in Mass Effect. While they could be hit or miss at times, especially for the male character, played by Brian Delaney, I genuinely began to enjoy the dialogue they gave. Delaney could be a bit overly dramatic at times, and Courtney Taylor could be a little bit under dramatic at times. But this is easily forgiven and is, for a Bethesda game, rather high quality. Now, the dialogue wheel and the entire dialogue system, other than the voice acting, that I was almost positive I would hate, ended up being just as bad as I expected. It's impossible to guess what your character might say due to the limited room for the dialogue choices. You get 4 options that are generally limited to yes, sarcastic yes, give me more information before I say yes, and no, which will switch you back around and force you to either say yes or delay the quest for later. It feels incredibly watered down. I've gotten to the point that I just skip through dialogue because it doesn't feel rewarding anymore. The lack of perk and skill checks in the dialogue also chaps me, and the game essentially forces you to be a good guy in the dialogue. I'd say a lack of an evil option for a playstyle is okay, because I generally play a good guy, But it's not okay. There are plenty of people that enjoy playing that playstyle, and the dialogue forces you into either a hero, sarcastic hero, or a mean hero. And that's not fair to some of the players. The story itself was better than Fallout 3, and indeed better than I expected, but not at all what it was made out to be. The characters, save for Kellogg and Valentine, all felt really cookie cutter, and the plot twist after reaching the Institute was so predictable that I had guessed to the letter what was going to happen before I even had the game in my hand. But this had very, very little effect on my view of the game because, like I said, it was far better than expected, even if it was a bit cliche and boring. Let's get into the lore here. There's several instances in Fallout 4 that directly go against the lore set by previous games. Power armor said in the original Fallouts to last hundreds of years without running out of power was placed into the game and runs on batteries similar to fusion cells that only last a few minutes, which is upsetting from a lore standpoint. I understand it from a balance standpoint, but it is upsetting. Also, power armor was said in previous games to require extensive training to be able to work with it. While the male protagonist could potentially have received this training pre-war, as he is a war veteran, it makes no sense that the female character would know how to use power armor. Not to mention the hundreds of raiders and gunners that can just hop into power armor and go to town, laying down a hellstorm for your character. I also won't forget to mention that there's a pre-war terminal entry or two referring to Jet, implying that Jet existed pre-war. Jet was created by a guy named Myron over in Reno, Nevada, sometime between 2220 and 2240. I don't exactly know the exact date. Nearly 200 years after the bomb fell and ended all civilization. This is obviously a mistake. Somebody forgot to take that out. Somebody forgot about that little bit of lore, and it doesn't bother me that much. But it does bother me that Jet is such a prominent drug in the Boston area, considering how far it is from Nevada. But this can be forgiven as Fallout 3 has the same issue. There are plenty more lore mess ups that are worse that I won't even care to mention here in hopes of keeping this video under 30 minutes, because I've got quite a few more things to say. On to the combat. Words can't describe how much of a relief it was when I realized gunplay was possible without that. The combat is smooth and the enemies aren't totally meat walls that stand out in the open hosing 5.56s at you in hopes of maybe hitting you. The AI takes cover, will defend their weak points, and are somewhat smart in combat, sometimes attempting to flank and do other tactics. However, they are still idiots at times. Raiders enjoy standing near live grenades and will happily hang out around cars that are on fire, counting down to discount apocalypse time. They're also sometimes pretty dumb with explosive weaponry. They'll attempt to use Fat Man against you, hit their own cover, or fire it like it's a close-range weapon if you close the gap, and turn their entire camp into a smoldering crater and all of his friends into a charred pile of torsos and viscera. Friendly AI will charge into the fray to meet their enemies head-on, like a line of bayonet-armed British soldiers in a Revolutionary War movie. The only problem is they're generally not armed with bayonets or armor or anything save for pipe pistols and baseball bats. They get in the way of your shots, and they get their asses handed to them. And then they all get offended when you accidentally shoot one of them. Similarly to raiders, they also have no idea that Fat Man and missile launchers are not close-range weapons, and will constantly use them up close, causing them to go kill their friends in a crazy suicide attack. Super mutant suiciders are the embodiment of these actions. The guns in Fallout 4 are disappointing, and I'm kind of upset about that. I'm a big fan of firearms, especially big, loud guns that make me feel better about myself. You would expect a game 8 years in the making, that's heavily focused on shooting things in a post-apocalyptic landscape, would have plenty of guns, right? Wrong. This is where things get seriously disappointing to me. There's very few guns in the game you'll actually use, such as the Deliverer and combat rifles. Other weapons have too many downsides to be good. The beloved 44 Magnum from older games has returned, but while it does heavy damage, much like its older counterparts, it's slower than a Christmas turtle in a jar full of honey. You'll get one good hit that nearly kills the target, but before you can get that much needed second hit, the target will usually move to cover, move, or just screw your day up. The shotguns in the game can deal massive damage at close range, but someone at Bethesda decided close range should be about 5 feet. Anything farther is going to take a drastically reduced damage penalty. This goes directly against how shotguns work in real life, where a shot up to 60 yards, sometimes farther, depending on your choke, with double-aught buckshot, which I'm assuming is what's in the game, may put every pellet into something smaller than an 8-inch target. Shotguns are quickly knocked out of the running in this game because enemies start picking up better armors. The guns themselves feel really lazy. The combat rifle is a reskin of the combat shotgun. Every rifle is, for some inexplicable reason, left-handed, and it's almost like Bethesda is saying, hey, look at our cool ejection animations. Either that or Boston has a strangely large amount of left-handed people, and only those left-handed people own firearms. The assault rifle ejects through the side of the gun, not the ejection port. Little things like this bother me. Like, say, the Deliverer, the smallest gun in the game, designed after a Walther PPK, so why and how is it chambered in 10mm? 10mm is a rather powerful cartridge in real life. It's essentially a semi-automatic .357 Magnum round, and can even get up to 41 Magnum speeds. Yet it's put into a gun in the game that the round won't even fit in, and even if it could, it would blow the gun all to pieces. Mind you, this isn't the first Fallout game to severely downplay the 10mm's effectiveness. Fallout 3's 10mm is quickly outclassed, and Fallout New Vegas' 10mm is only slightly better than the incredibly weak .357 Magnum revolver. Even the 45 ACPs in New Vegas are more powerful, even though, 10mm are significantly more powerful in real life. Take note that the 10mm is an accepted cartridge for hunting animals, and the 45 ACP isn't. Also, where did Bostonians get left-handed Thompsons? That doesn't make any sense at all. The laser weapons in the game are possibly the worst choice of weaponry in the game. Pretty much everything short of raiders has energy resistance, causing lasers to quickly become outclassed by even modded out pipe weapons. The plasma rifle is much more responsive than older games and combines all the goodness of laser weapons, energy damage, and some ballistic weapon advantages. But while they can deal damage like nobody's business, they're hard or impossible to use for anything but close-range combat due to the slow-moving projectiles, and they're much slower than a combat rifle on the trigger. They're also impossible to find up until you get around level 25. The gamma weapons are useless. Every enemy except humans are resistant to radiation, and there's really no reason to carry it around when a lightweight 10mm pistol will do more to just about everything. The junk jet and the railway rifle in the game suffer the same fate as plasma weapons, with none of the benefits. The junk jet fires away precious and heavy materials that you could be using for building, and does very, very little damage, even fully modded out. The railway rifle, while it's probably the most fun weapon in the game, and does massive damage, it is slow on the trigger, and the hard-to-find rounds are even slower than plasma weapons, making it difficult to use in close quarters and at long ranges. Big guns? What big guns? You mean the incredibly weak minigun, the incredibly heavy and useless missile launcher, the incredibly weak Gatling laser that runs on extremely expensive ammunition that you could be using for your glorious power armor? Ha! Forget them. I don't play a melee character, so I won't get into that department. I may go back and start over and do that, though. On to where the game actually shines. The atmosphere in Fallout 4 is wonderful, just like its predecessors. However, even better than its predecessors, Fallout 4 has interesting things every step you take. Every time you turn around, you get to see something unique. The game itself is beautiful, and even though everything is dead, the colors make the game feel more vibrant and alive. This is in stark contrast to Fallout 3, where everything is brown and green. However, once again, it feels like something is missing. Some things feel rushed, like the underwater areas of the game. There's so much underwater that has no use as far as I can see. There's dinghies around that you can ring, but they do nothing. There's wrecked ships with barrels, open cabins, and underwater pipelines that lead to nothing. These places don't even have anything in them. No scrap, no secrets, not even an old medical kit. It feels like someone intended for something to be down there, considering there's a perk that lets you breathe underwater somehow. But it feels like at the last minute Bethesda decided, hey, let's cut this from the game entirely, leaving us with a perk that lets you breathe underwater that you only get for the radiation resistance, so you don't collect rads every time you take a shortcut across a river or step in a puddle. Speaking of perks, the perk system is terrible. The removal of the skills system was bad enough, but the ease of getting perks combined with the ability to raise your special stats every time you level up, and the extremely quick leveling system with which Intelligence 10 you'll be able to rush through levels even past level 60, you become overpowered extremely quickly, especially if you know what you're doing. The game isn't an RPG anymore, it's a shooter. The building system is great and has taken up hours of my time, but even this feels rushed and almost feels like an excuse for Bethesda only putting in 3 cities: Diamond City, Good Neighbor, and Covenant. One of which, spoilers, you can kill everyone in and convert it into a giant generic settlement. Walls only want to go in a straight line, the electricity system has no explanation and is extremely difficult to get working correctly. There are items that have zero explanation for what they do as well. Want to build a double wall height room? Forget about it. Unless you do some very specific glitches, then you're stuck with a single wall height room. You'll quickly run out of building space. Your settlers will never be happy, no matter what you do. And if you decide to build some cool walls like I did, well, it won't matter, because when you fast travel to your nice fortress during attack, you'll find that enemies simply spawn inside. If you're not there during attack, the game does a shitty calculation of damage done. It doesn't happen in real time. So if you've got low defense, but a bunch of generators and crops, you will come back to every generator blown up, every crop destroyed, and every water pump Swiss cheesed by bullets. Even generators behind walls that are impossible to get to without moving the walls will go up in smoke. The worst part about this is, sometimes the game doesn't even notify you that you're under attack, and the game will occasionally register that an attack has taken place and treat it as though the player isn't there, allowing you to witness your generators inexplicably explode, your crops begin to disintegrate, and your NPCs go into a mad frenzy. As you can imagine, this is incredibly frustrating. Onto the music, however, the soundtrack that plays when the radio is off is okay. Nothing I find very memorable, nothing that sticks in my head as well as Skyrim's soundtrack, but nothing bad. The radio stations are not terrible, but here we go again, it feels poorly executed in places. The classical radio has no announcer, so unless you know every classical music piece in the game, you'll probably never figure out who's playing the song. Good luck getting a soundtrack collection. Diamond City Radio is boring. Travis is boring, and there's a quest to make him even more boring. Someone decided to throw some of the songs from Fallout 3 back into the rotation, which hits me as lazy. Some of the new music in the game is okay. The new Ella Fitzgerald songs are much appreciated, and anything Andrews Sisters and Bing Crosby are okay by me. Nat King Cole makes an appearance, which I appreciated very much. Skeeter Davis's End of the World fits perfectly with everything in the game. Linda Carter's original songs are excellent, especially Train Train, which happens to be my favorite song in the game. Fight me. However, these songs seem to show up much less often than the aforementioned less good songs in the game, such as Uranium Fever, Right Behind You, and my least favorite, Crawl Out Through the Fallout. Words cannot describe how much I hate Crawl Out Through the Fallout. I would sooner binge listen to Johnny Guitar for 10 hours straight than listen to Crawl Out Through the Fallout. The first mod I'm going to download will get rid of that song. After all of these excellent songs and some terrible songs, you realize there's not enough new music. By the time you reach Diamond City, you've heard every song in the game, except Train Train, because that song never fucking plays. You already memorized every lyric of Butcher Pete Part 1 8 years ago, and Butcher Pete Part 2 is the same song with different lyrics. Every new song you hear is either bad or never plays because you're going through your 8th chorus of bongo bongo bong. Looking back on this game, I've spent far less time than previous titles actually doing anything in the game. The lack of rewarding leveling, many of the things in the game being flat out broken, and the fact that all the weapons are all useless compared to the Overseer's Guardian and Deliverer, the game feels too watered down. I found myself going back to play another story branch, not because I was interested in the story or the characters, not because I'm interested in seeing endings, most of which are the same, but simply because I want the PSN trophies. I'm not even into achievement hunting, and this is my only goal for playing Fallout 4 multiple times, because I feel like I have to, because I feel like I've got an obligation to play it like every other Bethesda game. But Fallout 4 is disappointing, at least to me. I enjoyed every second I spent in the game, of course, but it's missing almost all of all of Fallout's signature charm. Where are the references to Strapping Young Lad? Where are the Mad Max references? Why is every pop culture reference that is in the game on terminals? Fallout 4 is missing its Fallout. I've spent months thinking about these things now, and I finally decided that if I had to give this game a numerical rating, I'd give it a 7.5 out of 10. But I'd still have to say, play it yourself and decide what you think about it. Anyway, thanks for watching and listening to me blabber on about my opinions on things. I really appreciate it. Leave a like and subscribe if you enjoy, listening to my awful voice. And again, I really appreciate you taking the time to watch this. All right, see yous.